Welcome to the InStory Show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and today I am thrilled to welcome Beverly Coogan. Hi, Beverly.
Hi, so nice to see you.
So Beverly Coogan is one of my InStory experts, a member of the InStory Way group, and Beverly is a mentor and an artist and a guide, and we're gonna delve today kind of into how do you go from being a victim and recognize what is like emotional abuse and into creative empowerment. As an artist, this has been what has kind of empowered Beverly all through everything. So like I make everybody do, start with what it was like for you when you were a kid. You know, where did you grow up and what was it like?
I grew up in Montana, and actually it was in the mountains. It was beautiful. We lived like at the top of a mountain pass. So we could just walk out of our house, and there were a lot of foothills, and actually there were probably more mountains than foothills, but I used to just sit at the top of the mountain, and I could see everything on both sides. There were mountains surrounding us on both sides. And I would just sit and contemplate. And actually, I was meditating. I just didn't even know it. And just think about, well, I don't understand why so many things in the world are messed up. But then also just really observe nature. Like sometimes I would just sit there and watch the bugs and go, well, wow, that's interesting. What is that ant doing? So, it was a lot of freedom for me because we had like 500 acres. We were in the middle of my grandfather's ranch, and we had a lot more freedom than kids do today.
I know you said it was true, like we had all that freedom when we were outside, but it wasn't quite like that when you went inside.
No, that's true. When you went inside, you had to toe the line, and you couldn't be loud or boisterous or, my father had anxiety, I believe. And so I learned to stay out of trouble by being quiet. Because when I was being myself, I often had some crazy idea to do something that, wasn't exactly in line with what my parents wanted me to do. And also because I was creative, I was more sensitive to things, and I had an idea how I wanted to be, and also temperamental. So as an artist, you have a vision. You get ideas and you want to do this project. Well, it's not exactly what the normal people would accept. Like, I remember one time I had to do this art project, and I decided I would make some sculptures by melting plastic over the stove. Well, actually, I wish I'd known at the time, but plastic's rather toxic, and it kind of created a smell, and it was an electric stove. So I remember, actually, I think my parents were in bed, and then my mom comes out, "What are you doing?" I'm just trying to finish this project. But I had a younger brother, and my parents said, being on a farm, they always wanted a boy to help out with everything, and there weren't any boys. My mom's family was all girls. And I always tried to compete with my brother, and I thought I was rather bossy, I would say, and he was just such a nice, sweet kid, and he was, easy to be with. He didn't make a lot of demands. And I was always wanting to do something that people had to get out of their comfort zone. So, well, yeah, I mean, he, of course, was the favorite one. So I wasn't, I always had to deal with that. It was like, I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Why don't they like me as much? And probably I internalized a lot of things that probably weren't even true.
Well, not, I mean, I think a lot of us have that thing, like tell the breakfast story.
Well, my brother was about a year and a half younger than me. And I think I was 4, maybe 5. And our parents had went out the night before, they went out dancing, and so they slept a lot later than usual. And my brother and I were up and about, and so we decided, I got the bright idea, well, let's make them breakfast. So, it was just like, I think we just made cereal and toast, nothing too exciting. Luckily, we didn't try to make scrambled eggs or something. And so when my mom got up, she was really delighted, but she kept praising my brother and she acted like I didn't have anything to do with it. So this is really where a pattern of self-sabotaging started for me. It was like, well, I didn't get any positive attention, so I'm going to get some negative attention. So we were putting stuff away, and of course I dropped a plate. And I thought, oh no, it didn't break, thank goodness, because I thought I was going to get yelled at for, breaking a plate. And later my mom did acknowledge, she did ask me why I was so upset, but I thought, I'm never going to do anything good enough to outbest my brother. It's like, unless you are a guy, you're just not important.
And not to mention, right, what you said about being creative and sensitive.
Right, because it's as a parent, it's kind of a pain in the neck because, you have this kid throwing temper tantrums. Well, kids are supposed to be nice. They're not supposed to throw temper tantrums. And it's embarrassing when you're out in public, but, really that's just being human. But, and especially in the 50s and 60s, it was kind of about, the kids did what the parents said. There was much more of a strict environment. And if you acted up as a kid, then, it was a reflection on your parents that they weren't very good parents.
Well, and that's a very common story because like my last summit we did empaths and highly sensitive. It's very common that nobody knew what the heck that was or how to validate you. So, so it's not surprising you grew up like so many of us, okay, I'm not going to show who I really am, right?
Yeah, because if I showed who I really was, then I usually got in trouble. I mean, I felt like I was in trouble all the time, just like, I don't know why. There's just something about you that is just irritating. So I tried to just be quiet because it seemed like I got in a lot less trouble.
Right. But that's such a perfect example, Beverly, of this whole thing about hiding. You're hiding your real self because nobody appreciated it.
Right. And so then you just think, well, it's socially unacceptable. And then you just do what you think everyone else does just
right.
to get by.
Right. Right. But you showed some bravery in when you decided, what you told me before was that you, first of all, you were going to tell a little bit about why you didn't go to art school. This is a really important thing, like when you were 19 and what you said to yourself about whether you could do art school or not.
Well, when I decided to go to college, actually, I did go to college for 1 year and I didn't know what to take. Like I was the oldest child and nobody in, my dad barely graduated 8th grade and my mom had a high school degree. And so, I felt like I had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And it wasn't like now, like you just take out a loan and you're in debt forever, but people paid for college out of their pockets. And I felt kind of guilty, like I really needed to make this count. So, I mean, and even now being an art major, it's like, well, how are you going to make a living? And I decided, well, this is what I really want to do. So if I can get A's and B's, then maybe I can be good enough to compete because you have to be at the top. So I took a sculpture class and I was really good at painting and realistic, doing landscapes and that kind of thing. But sculpture was not my thing and I only got a C. And so I felt I didn't have a mentor. So I just felt really discouraged. And I said, well, I'm not going to be able to make a living if I got a C.
Oh,
I mean, in retrospect, I'm going, oh, you still had 3 years to go. I was only a freshman. So,
right. But that's what I mean about it's such an important story to say, because so many of us did that to ourselves in one way or another. Okay, I didn't get this, so I must not be good enough, so I can't do this thing that's really what I want to do and be in the world. It's not
right.
late, but it's important to hear these stories. So, all right, so then tell what you did, what you decided to do instead.
Well, that summer I had worked at a dude ranch, and it was so much fun. That really was something I'll always remember. But I was from Montana, and I met some people that were from Denver. And I don't know what it was. I think it was just like a higher calling. I knew that I had to leave home, and be out on my own and just do my own thing. Uh, so I decided to go to Denver, visit my friend, and look for a job. So I asked my parents, and they said no. Now, when you're 19, you pretty much think you know everything, and there's no limits. It would be fun to be there again, I think. Yeah. So anyway, I went to visit my friend. My uncle had actually drove down because we had some relatives that live in kind of the suburbs. And my parents said it was okay for me to just come visit. But my goal was, I told myself, okay, you have a week to find a job and find a place to live. That unrealistic 19 hopeful thinking there. But actually, I was there. I extended my stay, and I actually got a really good job with the phone company because I had just done, all these tests to get into college and everything. And so I decided to stay, and at that time there were a lot of old houses, and they just rented out rooms, and I found one that just rented to girls. So it was like perfect. Everything just fell into place. Well, since my parents had told me I couldn't do that, they were not too happy. And in fact, my sister told me I was going to get kicked out of the family. And I thought, well, they'll get over it. But I, as I look back, I think the thing that really impressed me was that there was that inner calling that I was paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of my spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, I go, wow, I wish I was that brave now. I mean, sometimes I've had to be, but that was pretty brave because I didn't know anybody. And I remember in the interview, she said, well, you just came from a little podunk town called West Yellowstone where you were working. You're not going to know anybody here. And I thought, oh, I'll make friends. I was just not worried about anything. So, sometimes I forget that whole attitude.
Well, we get to have it back, I think, in a whole new way when we get older. Like now, like this whole theme of this summit and who you are now, and you're an InStory and all the stuff you're doing now, that is the way we do it now. It doesn't feel the same, but it is that same adventurous, creative spirit that we're saying, okay, it's never too late.
Right. And I think the wonderful thing is about getting older is you just don't care what people think anymore. It's like, and you've had enough experience that you can just see where they're at. And so, you have experienced the more diversity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So keep going. So then talk about your 10, what I like to call your 10-year lesson.
Yeah. I wasn't very experienced in social situations after I got out on my own. And of course, just coming from an environment where it was very controlled, I ended up in a relationship with a practicing alcoholic, and there was emotional abuse.
You got married, right? Like you actually got.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I left that part out. I got married, and I learned a lot about how people handle their pain. I mean, for some people, the only way they can handle their pain is through an addiction. So I learned a lot of compassion for that, but also I learned there are many ways that people try to control you because their fear of abandonment is so great. And so when you succumb to that, and when you don't take responsibility for your part in the whole thing, they're going to drag you down with them. So, but I feel like we're always on some kind of spiritual journey. And just because this thing happened to me, I got into Al Anon. And that's really where my spiritual journey really began, because I surrendered. I learned to trust in a higher power. And I'm one of those people, I just keep trying. I just keep coming up with ideas. I keep trying to fix. So if I hadn't been made to surrender, I wouldn't have just let go and trusted in a higher power and saying, well, okay, what are you trying to teach me here? And where am I supposed to go? And I think getting into Al-Anon I think the biggest thing is looking at, honestly, at yourself and what's your responsibility. And the one thing I think that's really important if somebody's in an abusive relationship is, or you're being victimized, is there are two big hooks. And one of the big hooks is that you don't realize it, but you have this feeling of power and control. And that is through, you think, oh, wow, someone cares for me so much that if I do something, that it affects their reaction. It's kind of a reverse, a reverse thing that happens, but it's like, oh, I actually have power over this person. And then the other thing is, actually, I forgot what I was going to say. Well, that'll come back to me later.
You made a list. I mean, part of what we're going to go over, and part's going to be your free gift, actually, is that list of things to recognize. And part of why it's not surprising why it's hard to say is because the whole thing about those kind of victimized relationships is you're not supposed to tell.
Right.
Like it's such a great moment. Like, I don't remember what I was going to say, because when you're in those relationships, the whole point is you're not supposed to say anything. Right? That's, right? Like that's the hiding. I'm fine. You know, for a long time, people who are in abusive relationships don't tell.
Right. There's the whole shame factor that goes with that.
Yeah.
And the real shame is that you're not being true to yourself.
Right.
And so sometimes you stay in denial a long time because you don't want to admit that and you don't know what to do with that.
Right. So talk a little bit about coming out of that.
Well, a couple of things. I think gratitude really helped me get out of that. Just staying in the moment and just looking what I had to be grateful for at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the positive, I mean, gratitude is always positive. You can't be in the negative. And one thing that keeps you hooked into the whole situation is that your mind gets into this squirrel cage of focused on the problem. And it like just creates this energy that you're preventing your higher power or God or whatever you choose to call it, the creative energy, from contacting you because you've got this stuff going on that's blocking, your higher creativity. And so you have to get out of that squirrel cage to get any real answers.
So, okay, so the first step out was just that whole work of Al-Anon, which is an incredible, deep work. And then you mentored others, and that basically led you to get out of your marriage, right?
Yes, it did. I guess the good thing that happened is a couple of people went into recovery just because I sought something out to get help. So, sometimes no matter how bleak things look, it seems like there's always a path out and that good things do happen out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, when you look at things as more of a spiritual journey instead of the good and bad or um, black and white, that it puts a whole new spin on everything.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about how art went with you through all this. Like, I know we were talking kind of before we dove in here, but about how even as a kid you did art, and and also what changed once you were out of your marriage. Because I think the reason I'm asking you is because it's important, I think, for people to see that you get to have it back. Like, you have always been an artist, but weren't there times where it was more shut down than others?
It was. As a kid, like, I remember sitting in school and we'd have story hour. So, and we were allowed to draw then. So I would always have something that I was working on. And I remember one time, this was this was my masterpiece as a kid. Okay, there was on the Coors beer container thing, the packaging, there was a picture of a waterfalls. So I did that in color grading. I don't know how long I worked on it, but I probably worked on it for maybe 3 weeks. But it was pretty realistic. And now I look back and laugh. I go, "Oh, off of a Coors package."
Well, it was a good nature scene, though.
Right, it was. So,
so
and
after
then
so after you got out of your marriage, what changed in terms of your art?
actually, I wasn't doing any art when I was married the first time, and but I was creative in a different way. I did a lot of sewing, and when I was at work and I was bored, I would just design clothes, and then I'd go home and I'd buy the material and make things up. But it wasn't until after I got into Al-Anon that I started going back to being creative and painting. And then I was always searching for something, and I found the botanical illustration program. And that was kind of like a perfect fit for me because I was so in tune to nature, and it was like amazing to me to just study these plants because you actually have to study them and see. You want to show the different parts of the plant, like the flower and how they recreate and how they disperse their seeds. So it was a nice combination for me.
So where did that lead you?
Um, well, I'm not quite sure
So, like, in terms
what
of
you would like me to say.
like, in terms of not feeling like you had to be the way someone said you had to be, like, maybe this is a good point to talk about Gene Keys a little bit and how you discovered that. Because look, part of this is about how we're coming out of hiding. I always say how when the in-story experts tell, it's an evolving journey. And you can talk a little bit about in-story and about finding Gene Keys and how you are seeing how to bring this out for you and for others. That empowerment part of creativity that's pulling you forward.
Well, that's interesting. I just came to me that I hadn't thought about before. But for me, I started getting in shows, and it really was an ego thing. Like, I had to be the best.
But then, I see that from the start, like you had to get A's and B's to do this. That's definitely, we have our things that follow us, right?
Right. But the one thing about the Gene Keys that so impressed me, and also being an in-story, like, I was exposed to a lot of different people. Like, I'd never even heard of Gene Keys. Um, but it was just the thing that impressed me about the gene keys and that kind of turned my thinking around was that it's not about the black and white. It's not about the winning. Everything is a process. Like the shadow of victimization. Really, the gift of that is freedom. But it's a journey. It's a journey between being a victim and learning how to be free. And that's free of what other people think, free to express yourself, free to fail. So before it was like, well, I had a fear of failing. So lots of times I either didn't try or I would sabotage myself because I had learned how to fail. I was actually pretty good at it. But there was also another fear, and that was like of succeeding. And I think a lot of people have this because once you succeed, then you always have to outdo yourself every time. So it's like, oh, someone's an expert in this, or they're really great at this. Well, what if your next painting doesn't turn out that great? If you don't experiment, if you experiment, which you have to have freedom to experiment, then you're always going to be in the same place and you're never going to evolve. And so there's a lot of pressure there. And so I realized, well, that's ridiculous. The only person I really need to answer to is myself.
So powerful what you're saying, that incredible standard that's so high, and then if you even succeed, then that isn't okay, because then the next time you're not going to be as good as you were the last time.
Right. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. It's kind of like people who have a hit song and then like, oh, the next one, oh, I don't know, I don't think that one was as great. So
right, we're so hard on ourselves.
I know. And what if we just had the freedom to create and say, okay, well, this one's not so great. And I remember I was taking this art class and I was trying to do people, and they were quite a ways away. So it's hard to do a little figure of a person in oil painting. I mean, you have to be pretty accurate with your drawing or else it's not going to look like a person. And my instructor told me, well, it didn't turn out this great, but I bet next time you'll do much better. So I was like, oh, okay, well, it's all right not to get it right this time. I have plenty of other opportunities.
That is such a growth for all of us, is to what you said about being free to fail is so important. So, all right, so talk a little bit now about why did you decide to join InStory, and and why have you decided to investigate gene keys, and talk a little bit about this coming out of hiding for you, and you weren't on the first time you were in the beginning of being InStory, you weren't on my series. And this is what I'm always so proud of people about, is that it's not easy to step into the light kind of, and to come out of hiding and share.
Well, I joined InStory because I was, at 60, you're kind of looking back at your life going, If I had to talk to St. Peter at the gate and he asked me, well, what did you learn in this life? I'd be going, well, on the outside, it doesn't look that great, but I knew that I had learned a lot of things that were important. And I think the wonderful thing about having to do this talk, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've changed this. Like I just changed it last night. So, but I kept having, as I wrote it out, I kept having epiphanies of my growth, really. So I think the awesome thing about InStory and the gene keys is that having a different perspective on life, it's not, what great jobs you had, what education you had. It's what adversity did you overcome? And also the resilience of the human spirit. I mean, I do see myself that even faced with a lot of dark periods, I had an unsquashable spirit and I just kept trying. I would get discouraged, but I would always, you go to bed and then you'd wake up in the morning and go, oh, I didn't try this. I think I can try this. And so it's like God is always talking to you, but we're not always listening. So I just looked at my life in a different way, that it was more about an involvement and growing. And that's why we're here. It's not like people have made it a win or lose thing, or accolades, or, you know, getting medals or whatever. It's, in my mind, it is not about that.
It's not. 100%. I completely agree with you. All right. So tell a little bit about the 2 free gifts you created, because it's really to help people take this journey that you yourself are such an advocate for.
Well, hopefully not many people will need this, but I made up a list of the patterns of emotional victimization. So, because sometimes there's a pretty fine line between what is just a negative pattern that somebody has and what is actually abuse. And, you know, it might be controlling of finances, or you try to have a conversation and they're dismissing all the facts, or maybe they're emotionally immature. But I made up a list. Also, there's a hotline on there. So there's resources on there, and there's a Center for Relationship Abuse. So if anyone feels that they need that, please download that. And then I
want to say one more thing about that. So first of all, everybody should get it and look at it, because even if you're not there anymore, it might give you the words to be able to say it to someone else. Because sometimes we just don't know how to see it or say it, even if it's not about us. And the other thing is, it will be interesting for a lot of us to look back to see, was that thing I went through emotional abuse? Like, was that what it was? So I think it's super powerful that you did your work and you've put it together. And I really think that for people to get it and be able to put words on a lot of this is very empowering. So just wanted to say that. What's the other one that you have?
Okay, my other free gift is Creativity to Empower Your Life. So it's a pretty comprehensive list of activities you can do. I put on there a chanting thing you can do, kind of like a meditation. Maybe you want to do some kind of therapy. But the main thing is that you're getting out of this squirrel cage thinking, because you're going to stay stuck if you don't get out of it. And so these are tools to use. And so I made a pretty comprehensive list. So I hope you'll download that.
Right. And what I love about this is it's like, okay, here's the trap, the emotional abuse, and here's the tools to get out. Because creativity is a big part. Like, it's so perfect, because the theme of this whole series is, you know, it's finally your turn, dare to be seen, and how to come out of hiding so you can share your creativity and your gifts with the world. And of course, your story. So everybody, what I would love for you to do is get both these lists, look at them, and then post in the Facebook group, where are you? Like, are you completely over all of that emotional abuse? And then what creative empowerment are you living? If you're already in the creative empowerment, but maybe you're still hiding, right? Like, that's part of this. So we want you to share with us, and you'll have Beverly's email in there also. So if you are in hiding, reach out to Beverly, because here's the thing, we come out of hiding together, holding hands, so to speak, in someone who you can say your truth to. So Beverly's been through a lot, and her wisdom will really help you if you are walking this path, or if you're wondering where you are in it, okay? So Beverly, I love that you made those, and just as we wrap up, share just the last few words of inspiration for us. A few last thoughts.
Well, never give up on yourself. There is always hope, and just keep seeking. You'll know. I think the most important thing is learn to connect to your heart. Make your decisions from your heart and not your head, because your head isn't necessarily helping you out. That your head has some distorted stuff going in there. So I think the most important guide in life is connecting to your heart and just listening to that.
I love that. And that's that spiritual connection to the heart that we are opening up. And it's so much my vision for all of you who are watching the InStory show with us. So Beverly, thank you. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you all for watching. As I always say in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.
Bye.